Hello and welcome to episode 10 of The Dive, a weekly podcast where we keep you up to date on the world of League esports. We finally hit double digits, and to celebrate, we're going to do the same thing as always, but we have someone a little bit different
Double
here.
digits what?
Double digits episodes, episode 10. Kobe,
Okay.
listen. We got Freak here instead of Jat. Jat's out sick. What's up, Freak?
Yeah, I mean, I got some big shoes to fill. Unfortunately, his feet are bigger than mine, so they're only about 3/4 filled.
You took the whole time to come up with that?
Yeah. I knew for like 2 days that I was gonna fill in, and this is my opening line. Welcome to The Dive, David Freak Turley.
All right. Well, this week.
I love how he always enjoys
Let me get to the topics.
more than anyone else. Okay, go, Kobe.
I missed out on his joke. But our topics are going to be franchising. That's big news.
Mm-hmm.
We are also going to talk about this meme stream dream team or whatever that's going to be in the Challenger.
Great.
Or whatever order their name is now. Plus the meta, how it shaped up, and obviously our predictions we had for North American LCS. What is going to be reality versus what we actually thought was going to be there.
Yeah, so we can just get into like global news for now, like franchising. Obviously, a pretty big topic. There has been we're not going to go super in depth about it because there's a lot of videos already out on it. There's like the Yahoo interview, there was like the announcement video, and there's a huge article. So if you guys want to read up on it, you can find the article on LOL Esports pretty easily. But kind of just interested in some of your guys' opinions on franchising.
Yeah, right off the bat, Freak.
All right,
it seems. Yeah, well, it seems like. Everybody's pretty hyped up as far as the security. And this is one of the biggest things that team owners were pushing for. Do you think it's actually going to accomplish that in like a good way?
Yeah, so I think it helps the teams, helps the players. For me as a caster, and like maybe even for like Riot as a company, like I don't think it affects me in many ways other than I no longer cast promotion tournaments and like Challenger no longer directly like, ooh, I wonder if they can make LCS.
Is that a
right?
positive or an
I mean, it's like fine, right? It's like, okay, cool. Like I'm happy that like TSM's gonna make more money, assumingly, and Bjergsen's gonna make more money. Like all those guys are gonna have a better job, right? Like their minimum salary is going up, and like they're gonna get a third of all the revenue of like advertisements and stuff. Like that's super sweet, and I'm super happy for them. And like maybe the games get better as a result. But,
well, it does affect you. Both as a caster and as someone who watches North American LCS every single game, the teams that you're going to see from year to year,
that's true,
theoretically will be more constant. And, does that excite you? Or are you sad that there won't be this relegation and there won't be the drawback a lot of people are bringing up, obviously, is kicking out the teams at the bottom.
Right. I liked the idea of, 5 dudes get together and make their way up through solo queue into the Challenger Series into LCS.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I mean, I own a Unicorns of Love shirt because like I got to cast them, and I remember casting them in Challenger and be like, this feels like an LCS level team. Like I just remember casting them in like their first week games, whatever. Like this team feels good enough to like make LCS. And then like here they are going to like, they're probably going to go to Worlds or something at the end of this year, right? Like super good team. And you're right, we missed a little bit of that. But at the same time, like I'm glad that like in a year's time, like all the owners are going to be actually good. Like there have been some crap owners and some like really bad managers who've like made really bad roster choices, and like they've screwed players before. And like, I don't want to be part of that, right? Like, and so there's parts that definitely do, though not exactly directly, because my job kind of stays the same, that like it's going to be better seen, it's going to be better teams, better players, and that is good.
Yeah, I think it is good overall, of course. One of the things I always think is kind of funny is people like I feel like have this opinion about franchising where it's like, oh yeah, so much job security for the players, and there is maybe more for like the people who are like middle or upper tier or something. But it's not like players. If you're a bad player, the team is not just going to keep you, right? You'll get replaced. So like, although relegation doesn't exist, I still feel like if you're a bottom tier player, you still are going to have that worry because there's no reason to keep the person around. You can still like, especially with like the farm teams and stuff, which is essentially what like CS would become, like a D League or whatever, like the NBA kind of thing. So you can bring people up, and those players will still be changing out if they're bad, right? Because theoretically, if you're a bottom team for however many years in a row, you can get kicked out of the league and this sorts of things. So there's still going to be a lot of changes like that. One of the things that I think is most important about any big change to the league, though, is the pro players have to like it, right? If the pro players are happy and the owners are happy, the fans are pretty much going to be happy, and like I'm not really going to care. Like, but the minimum salary is going up. The question is like, does that actually help like Bjergsen or whatever, to your point, right? Because like he's not necessarily going to be affected by that, and you hope that he like his salary, equally goes up or whatever. But that was one of my concerns with it is like, would the top paid players be happy about this when everyone else is getting closer to them if they don't also kind of make more money?
Well, I mean, if you're not one of the top paid players, then it definitely makes you more happy. And it doesn't make any of the top paid players unhappy. So It didn't see there. I don't see any drawbacks.
Unless you're like mad that someone else
Yeah,
makes more
it's-
money now, right? Like,
As long
how
as-
dare you?
But some people would be, right? Like
Okay,
if you're making, you know, twice as much or whatever, or like as someone else before, and then they're making just a little bit under you, like I think
Well,
some people might.
that just seems like a very spiteful person to me.
I don't care about that person anymore.
As far as
it's
the
realistic.
as far as the actual detailed information that was released concerning the players, both raising the bottom salary
Yeah.
as well as the players association, I think the players are right now pretty much in favor, pretty overwhelmingly in favor of this right now.
Right.
And I'm really curious to see how the players association turns out.
Yeah.
Because I heard that they do, all of them are voting right now to determine what body is actually going to govern it, and how that's actually going to look like. So they do get a say in it. And that's one of the things I'm most excited for, because you talk about all these things where management has mistreated players, or different organizations in esports are shady, and everyone's like, oh yeah, you need all this help when looking at the contracts that you sign when you're trying to go pro, and it's so scary for really young players. This takes away a lot of that, I would think. I think this would be a big step, at least in the right direction.
Yeah, and I've always thought that like esports has kind of made it not when the best player is making a lot of money, but when the worst player in your pro league is making a lot of money. That's when I think that you're full on legit, right? Because if you can have it as a goal to be like, the worst player in the LCS, like that's not your goal, but you know what I mean, right? Like you're a practice partner or whatever, and you can have that as a real career. Like when you look at like NFL practice teams, and some of these players are making hundreds of thousands of dollars who will never even sit on the bench during the game day. Like when that's a real career path, that's awesome. And I do think that franchising is a big step towards that, having a good minimum salary.
Especially since not only if you're one of the lowest paid players on your team, you're not just, it's like the NBA, you're on the bench the whole time, who you don't get to play. It's you get flamed every single day because you're garbage. Like the people who are lowest paid are also the people who are getting the most flame and are under the most psychological stress. So I think raising that definitely does a lot, and we do need to take care of those players.
Absolutely.
Because we do need more talent, especially if we're just looking at North American LCS.
Sure.
We need to find a way to bring up more. We have to raise the floor right now rather than do anything about the ceiling. I think the ceiling is fine.
And I think the floor is going to get raised, because I'm thinking of like what happens when this happens, right? Okay, so as you're mentioning, like even the worst players making 75K, like everyone's getting a share of the profits, right? A third of all of the advertising revenues go to the players, so it's either like increases everyone's salaries even further. You have to assume in some cases here. Also, it means that every team is fielding 10 players at least, because they're all going to run an academy team. So now you've got legitimately 100 LCS/Challenger pros. That's not even counting coaches and analysts and everything else. And again, like based on the fact that okay, well, they're immediately going to backfill. Like if Bjergsen gets sick, well, TSM's sub mid laner has been playing an academy league the whole split. Great, he's ready to go. Something like that, right? And now you've got more reasons to play hard, right? There's more players are getting good compensation for this. And now if you're like, well, you look at players like Revenge or whatever who are like super good in solo queue, and it's like, actually, I'd rather go to school. But maybe that guy says, you know what, actually, it's more viable for me to go and, be TSM sub top lane or whatever. And so more of these players can make the choice to go pro. And now the fact that there's 100 people that can be in this maybe sub pro level or close enough to it, you're like, well, I got to take solo queue more seriously, because now I might make it onto a team as a result. I'm going to try a bit harder. Solo queue gets better practice. And like this.
The trickle down.
I actually think in this case,
And
you have
then
trickle down solo queue.
D5 is better where Freak is. Freak becomes
I am
better.
Diamond 2. You take that back.
He makes the challenger team, and he is Bjergsen's sub.
There we go.
But,
I'm a quick casting. I'll sub for
but
PewDiePie.
I mean, I think that
I like how you slide that quick D5 insult in there too. Good
Yeah,
correction.
That's fair.
He's
That's
higher
Diamond 2
rank. Yeah.
35 LP.
Yeah,
All right.
there you go. D2. He's got like, but
Down to the LP.
But point is, I think it's also really cool. Like, I'm not going to say for sure that TSM's academy team is going to get to scrim TSM, because maybe they're not a big enough challenge, and maybe TSM only still wants to scrim the best teams. But you would hope that it's a good enough environment that if I'm, the B team mid laner, I can at least like watch and learn from Bjergsen and use it like that, right? So you would hope that these challenger teams have more access to knowledgeable staff, to knowledgeable players, hopefully to some sort of scrims and stuff like that within the teams as well, because this could be very beneficial, not just for the teams using it as replacements, but like for these players' development. Like if you get on TSM's B team and you're a mid laner, well, holy crap, you get to learn from who is the best mid laner in North America. Like that's a big opportunity that most challenger players would not have in this current system.
So I do want to bring up something, because it did resonate a lot with me when people were complaining a little bit about removing the relegation tournament, right? Because that added whether you like it or not, that was a lot of extra anticipation for these games at the end of the year, where
Sure.
usually if it's a number 8 team playing the number 10 team, don't care as much if there is no relegation on the line. But
Right.
we would have almost the same amount of viewers for that as we would have for the TSM Cloud9 games, because they're like, oh, I want to see who's getting relegated today, and
Sure.
people want to watch the tiers sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I feel you.
As as harsh as that is to say, I did like the adjustment where they did add in a little part. If you are, I believe the numbers and the details
5 of the
are
last 8 splits, right?
yeah, if there's 8 splits, if you are bottom 2 in 5 of the last 8 splits, then it is possible to still get.
Yeah, I think it's like
what I don't know what the term.
Force you to sell the team. I
Yeah,
believe is the term.
okay, that's what it was.
So like, yeah, you can't be like the Cleveland Browns. I think is the recent one that's being used, is like they're just bottom feeding forever, farming for draft picks and whatnot, and selling them off to trade players, etc. So like, yeah, I mean that'll be nice. Where like, if you're pulling an Origin where like you just can't put a roster together and you're mismanaged so badly that you still can't, like, no one wants to play for you. It's like, okay, well, you bottom feed, and then out you go.
And I mean, I feel like at that point, if you're 5 of 8 splits,
that's a
bottom
long
2,
time.
like you're not even trying. Like,
yeah,
I
that's
mean,
4
like,
years.
Yeah, like that's pretty nuts. And
It's like the lifetime record of Coast.
while that's brutal. While I agree, like I enjoy watching relegations because there's so much on the line. As a pro player, like that's, I think, ridiculously stressful. If you're down near the bottom, you don't necessarily have to worry about your whole team, just your job just being gone, right? Like, yes, some of the players may get replaced and things like that can change, but it's not as scary. Like, I can't imagine when I was doing tournaments and stuff, if it's like, oh God, if I lose this one thing, like I don't have a team anymore, I may not have a job anymore. So like, there's a lot of stress on pro players regardless, even if you're a good pro player, because like all the social media, like there's a lot of positive and negative, but if you're doing poorly, you're gonna get lots of negative attention.
Sure.
There's a massive amount of viewership, there's so much discussion about it. And then if you're also worrying about losing your job, like that's a ridiculous amount of stress. And we want our pro players to be like healthy and happy and hopefully have long careers. So I think this is a good step towards that. But yeah.
I think if you're a good player, like I look at TSM's jungler Sven, and like he got relegated from the EU LCS on SK Gaming, and TSM's like, yo, we're the best team in North America, can play for us.
Yeah.
Like a split later, right? And he's like, all right, well, now I'm at Worlds with TSM. So like I said, or like you've been kind of saying, if you're a good player, you will find employment. And if you're a bad player, like they can sub you out. And that comes down to your players association. Are you signing contract for more than a year? Like, you that relationship with a player in your team is what your longevity looks like, even if you don't have good performances. But if you're a good player, like people are going to want you regardless.
All right, well, let's talk about some good players then.
Challenger team.
Because our next topic is the QtPie Scara combination here.
The meme
Dream Team, Dream Meme Team, or whatever. Streamers, basically.
Yeah.
That this is what we're left with here for the last, Challenger series, right?
Yeah.
Echo Fox were kind of undecided on how they wanted to go about this, since obviously you're not going to get promoted in there.
Yeah.
And they came up with a really creative solution, it seemed like to me and most of the community, that people are pretty excited about.
Yeah, I think there's pretty much only 2 ways that sort of Delta Fox goes about this, because in the first place, right, they have the 5 subs already for the actual Echo Fox roster with Mash and Co, where they're just screaming back and forth. And like that's like, in a sense, almost like the real Delta Fox, and that like that's the real sub squad, and that's the team that Echo Fox is practicing against. Because again, there's not a real future for the challenger spot Delta Fox. Like, you either sell the team, or say you sell the spot, which I think would have been a viable option, but didn't happen in this case. Or you do something for publicity, which I think is super great, because Echo Fox have some positive exposure, but it's mostly been Rick Fox himself, then a little bit from Froggen, and then a lot from Keith being made fun of repeatedly. So now you've got actually a bright point where it's like, hey, look at these fun players, and it shines a spotlight on Challenger a little bit, which is going to become the Academy League. So I think it ends up being a positive, even though it is really strange. I think we're going to go like 0-12.
Yeah, it's actually really funny too, because as a player, you can tell with from the streamers' perspectives, they're like, you know what? I was pro. I enjoyed playing pro and winning pro. They don't want to have to put in a lot of work and practice.
We're not going didn't like the practice.
And we all saw how the first time around with the practice went. But I feel like they are going to win out of this too. I feel like it's pretty much win-win for pretty much everybody there. Is wagging his finger though.
Yeah. So the thing is, it's like, Don't get me wrong. I love it. I watched the practice scrims. They
Uh-huh.
were hilarious. I'm gonna watch whatever is available, or like be happy to cast whatever is available for that. Like I think it's really fun. I think it's great publicity. But there is one guy who I thought kind of got screwed in it. It was actually Shinon, who was on Delta Fox. He's the one guy out of the
True.
5-man squad who did not get to go up to the Echo Fox main team as a sub, and Big was the other guy who went to Dignitas. So like he's the one guy who for him, it's not that fun, right? Like he essentially gets dropped and earned his spot, rightfully so, and could have perhaps used this challenger split to play and maybe prove himself, and hopefully for him get on one of those academy teams or something like that. So that does feel pretty bad for the one guy, especially if you're looking at this like as just a publicity stunt, because this could negatively impact his career, whether or not he would have got picked up, whether or not he would have gone well. I don't really know, but it definitely sucks for him. So that is something that kind of gets overlooked in all the hype, I think. But definitely, it's a lot of fun to watch, right? And it is also fun to see like some guys who are really good challenger players and stuff like that. Obviously, they're not a practice team, but the difference between them and even the sub squad for Echo Fox, like they got slammed in those games. Like even when Cutie Pie
Keith went like 9-0, right? He like hard smashed bot lane and he made Cutie Pie go 0-7-0. Like and that was like the one returning member from like the starting round.
Even the Urgot game, where they got Cutie Pie starts with a double kill, and then you look and Urgot's up like 70 CS, and you're like, what is happening? Like they're just getting slammed.
Yeah, goes to prove that Keith is better than maybe you think. It's just always interesting when you've got like, okay, Diamond 1 players are pretty good, Master players are really good, Challenger players are super good. You get Challenger Series players, they're really good, and LCS players like smash all of them. It's not even close. And just like the quality of player keeps going up. And like Keith looks bad in the LCS, and he smashes the rank 2 player in the ladder.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a big difference, right? But it's also like to me,
rank 2?
It's not
Around
just
there,
about
right?
It's not just about like the individual skill, right? Because you could say, oh, maybe like Cutie Pie could match up well and beat him in solo queue games and stuff like that. It's about the team, right? It's about the team play, because I think at competitive level, it's less about, oh, you could be someone in lane. It's more about like they move around the map and use advantages, and like anytime they make a mistake, they get punished so hard. And it's very fun to watch it from their point of view and see like how impossible that game looked, even against people who are like not the top tier players, right? Like it looks hopeless because you're playing against a real team who, despite Urgot getting killed and bot lane getting double killed early, they then dive you and then they zone you off turrets and they just like capitalize.
It's kind of like when you're at MSI and you're watching SKT and you have this feeling that, oh, SKT's behind right now. I have this weird feeling that
they're gonna win anyway.
In the mid game, they're gonna start pushing turrets and they're gonna come back and there's gonna be this big team fight and Wolf is gonna flash over the wall. Pretty sure, it's pretty funny that you have these types of like layers basically. Skill.
One of my most fun experiences in League was actually doing rank 5s when I was on playtest. We did a rank 5s team and we played up and we got to like Challenger or whatever. And we started playing we didn't keep Challenger, but we got to Challenger.
Yeah, made it.
But we started playing some of the like the ULOL teams, and we were like beating some ULOL teams and stuff. And then we played started playing some of the CS teams and whatever. And like I think we maybe randomly beat some like bottom CS team where we got like lucky and got like a bunch of random kills. But almost all our games against teams of that level, it felt like so ridiculously hopeless, not because like our individual like lanes were like doing so poorly or whatever, but if they got an advantage anywhere, they were just so much better on like capitalizing on it, on moving on a map, like of knowing where to go, what to do, and like even just you do specific picks and they would like lane swap on us and do things and we're like, oh god, like what are we even supposed to do here? Like I don't know where to go, I don't know what to do.
I remember 2 years ago, my first lane swap game. I was in a solo queue game and I was in with all of Immortals on my team.
Yeah.
And we were against another full team. I think it was
so you're just the guy that fucked it all up.
Basically, the whole entire story is how they decided the team we were against decided to lane swap.
Yeah.
And like all the Immortal guys were like trying to like tell me
what
like
to do.
beat me and stuff. Like go over here, go over there. And I was just like, wait, what? Where am I supposed to be right now? And I was like, when I watch these and I'm casting them, I can see both sides. It looks pretty easy, like go to the turret here, don't stay under that one, you're gonna die. But I was just like, the whole map is dark. You just feel clueless, and they're always attacking somewhere, and everyone's spamming pings on you. Like, help now.
I remember in a lot of those games, I was playing like a lot of Soraka because I thought Soraka was like super cheap, and I was playing support. And we'd get into a team, and we're like, oh crap, it's a challenger team, and their support's like playing Blitzcrank or something. And they lane swap on us, and I'm just like wandering around as a level 1 Soraka, like I guess I'll like heal you a little bit, and then the Blitzcrank gets like a double kill bot lane. I'm like, topped off our mid laner. Oh, you can win lane now, right?
That's
Like,
even more funny because you have to like speed around to all the people who are low, and you're like, oh God, run over there. Oh no, he's hurt. Now I gotta run over here.
yeah, it was pretty tragic. I was about as useless as could be. Moving on, I want to talk a little bit about current state of the meta. Obviously, like a lot of people, well, and just NA LCS as a whole, we kind of established some expectations. We did our power rankings and stuff, and everyone had their own expectations going into the season of how it was going to look, right? Like as far as picks, as far as meta, as far as team strength and stuff. And some of it was like pretty wildly different, I think, than what we actually got. Like, you know, a lot of people, for example, with Smithy, right? Like that is the big trade, and it was kind of like, oh, well, CLG's probably going to be real good, but Immortals, ooh, well, they lost their carry jungler. Guess they're screwed, right? And well, turns out Immortals actually looked really, really good.
Yeah, I think they actually might be the actual best team in NA. It's exactly 2 matches, but the fact is they beat good teams to do it. So you say, okay, well, you beat TSM. That's actually pretty solid. Yeah, they just kept getting better. Smithy seemed to be that proper linchpin. I mean, CLG looked pretty good themselves. C9, I mean, you can... you know, kind of forgive. They had a pretty hard first set of matches, but honestly, it's just like, look, teams are going to go up and down in a given week. Like maybe Immortals played on the far right side of the bell curve, and their actually average skill is 5th place.
Yeah, you are jumping ahead all the way to our full next section, Azael, though. We're supposed to talk about the current meta and how the changes in the meta were different from what we expected first.
We can just combine it all.
Well, we will just combine it all because we were eventually going to get to North American LCS because all the expectations were kind of flipped upside down in week number 1. You talk about that trade being huge. Both of the teams really highly benefited from us. I don't think anybody expected, you know, to be this successful for both sides.
Yeah, I mean, it actually does feel like a true win-win, which anytime people kind of say that, you're like, that's pretty fraudulent. It's probably not, right? But it actually did seem like it turned out at like a win-win, right? Like they're different players, but the teams needed different things, and the way that Smithy is able to play around the team. And I thought that, I think it was Pobelter in one of his interviews saying how before they were just like 5 players all trying to carry essentially, and no one really could. And now, you know, they're more like they have this guy who's a leader and like a shot caller and is willing to play that more role-playing style.
I do want to step in on that because I've seen everybody be like, oh yeah, and it's all about you know, Smithy being the guy who's going to improve the atmosphere.
Teamwork and friendship.
Yeah, exactly. Teamwork, friendship.
Bringing his CLG pride over.
You know, he understands the game really well, so it's there. And, you know, he's this really supportive guy. But he has been going off in the early game. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, you know, and then CLG needed a more proactive, you know, ganking, aggressive jungler. I'm like,
Smithy looked better than Dardoch.
Pulled off like 5 ganks within the first like 7 minutes or something.
Game especially, I thought was insane.
He was super aggressive. He was pulling off a ton of ganks, and everybody's jumping and they're onto the story and they're like, oh yeah, just how we thought it would be. You know, he's very supportive. He's all concentrating on this warding and stuff. I'm like, this man is playing Elise, Lee Sin, Gragas, going for level 3 ganks every single game and absolutely popping off. Yep. And he's not getting credit for what he's actually bringing to this team, which is not just, oh yes, he did improve the atmosphere. And you know, Pobelter's congratulating him on how well he understands the game. That's all well and good, and they do look more decisive. Yep. He's also bringing mechanics. He's also going for early games.
Yeah, that's really fair. And I mean, it is a good point too to bring up, especially because I think that last split on CLG, as far as like individual play, was actually the worst I had seen.
Oh, for sure. And that's why nobody expected this.
Yeah. So it is really surprising. And it is, I'm glad you did bring it up because he had been playing incredibly well individually too. And it's interesting also with CLG. I mean, they're doing quite well for themselves. You know, it hadn't been as one-sided games, but Dardoch had not looked that good yet. But a lot of people are taking that as kind of like a positive thing. They won't be taking that as a positive thing in like in 3 or 4 weeks if like CLG starts losing. He still hasn't done well. But people are giving Dardoch the benefit of the doubt that it's like, this is a guy who has had so many carry performances over the last while that you can give him a couple games and be like, okay, it's not that big of a deal because he's going to pop off and carry some games in the coming weeks. Everyone's assuming at least.
It's dangerous to say benefit of the doubt because we've seen players like Rainover who have been weak for the entire last split, maybe a couple of games here and there where he looked okay. And so far this one as well, he's been pretty crap so far in week 1. It is interesting though, when you, again, to talk about the Smithy Dardoch thing, where if you took the nameplates off and you just had them play the games again, you'd think there's no roster swap at all. Right? Dardoch on CLG looked about as good as Smithy did last split, where he's like got really mediocre score lines. The rest of his team is carrying him. And he's just like kind of open to be there. And Smithy was the one actually getting everything off and looking like the old Dardoch on Immortals. So yeah, I want to see how these players progress. Obviously, Xmithie's up and Dardoch looks a bit down.
Yeah. As far as combining the expectations versus reality of the two different ones that we have here, to try and get back to the meta changes,
Okay.
CLG, they had a lot of success not only with Dardoch and with this trade, but also with some of the new picks. I was such a big fan of Aframu and Stixays, Zaya and Rakan, that I was just like, oh my God, these picks are amazing. I want to see them all the time. Then we saw some other people pick them, and
it wasn't as good.
Not quite so good.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to say that, like, how important it is that they use these picks well, right? Not only was it, it's the combination of the new duo here, Aframu seemed to really have a good handle on the ranges of the spells and the reaction times, the plays that he could go for. And he made play after play after play with this to set up, as well as with Huhi and the Shockwaves. So it just seemed like their team worked really well around some of these new champions.
Yeah, I think it looks super good. I hadn't seen a lot of Rakan myself, and so like realizing that RW is a combo and Flash RW is a combo, I was like, oh, I actually hadn't thought of that, and I hadn't seen it in any of the games I'd played. But like, wow, that's now impossible to dodge, and we saw it
screen away,
right? And it's like, and that's what I love a lot about like week 1 LCS is like you've got stuff prepared that you didn't scrim your opponents and give them that opportunity. So it's like we saw a lot of it alongside an Orianna or a Gragas, where like the charm and the knockup is long enough that you can guarantee a shockwave lands, or you can guarantee something else lands, right? Zaya can easily follow up with a feather storm afterwards and get the roots off, and you've got like almost 3 seconds of guaranteed you can't move with a less than a quarter second reaction time, because that's how long it takes him to RW onto you, right? And as soon as he's in range, the charm is hit and you no longer can do anything, and those combos were sick.
Yeah, and so we got to see the highlights, and then we also got to see the lows. He is weak in lane. He can't get punished. He's basically melee, even though he can, shoot the range Q and stuff. But I feel like it's really interesting when we do have those trade-offs, and those are the types of things that design tries to put into the game, where you have to knowingly have possibly much weaker lane, come out down in CS or whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, playmaking in general seemed to be up. Like Bard was pretty sick as well, and Aframu, I think a lot of CLG success was at the hands of his playmaking in the Bard game, in the Rakan game. He has looked super, super good. And I think that Aframu at his best is a playmaker. He's not, the guy who's just sitting back. Like when he is proactive for the team, moving around, making things happen, I think that's when they're super, super strong. And one of the things that I had found interesting is hearing from some of the supports and stuff that they felt like these playmaking supports were enabled by actually the Doran Shield, which everyone is complaining about, because it means that your AD carry can survive the poke against someone like a Karma or a Zyra or a Nami, who otherwise slams you so hard in lane that you must play something that's equally strong in lane to just keep the lane even. So like I'm going to be interested to see when Doran Shield inevitably gets changed, because I mean everyone's complaining about it. It's going to get nerfed, right? So it's like, can we still see that? Because I'll be really sad if Doran Shield nerf means we lose playmaking supports and we're just back to Karma Lulu and stuff like that.
I think it's personally a sort of regional metagame thing where I think NA is actually still on the poke supports. Like Karma and Zyra and Lulu are still around, but like if you look at global pick stats, like Thresh is the most common support everywhere except North America, where it's still Karma, right? And it's like, well, everyone else seems to think it's fine, and based on international performances, North America probably not the smartest region right now. And it's like, I mean, but that's true though. Like I always like when teams innovate and do new stuff, and hey, Thresh being #1 in Korea and et cetera. And you looked at Mithy over in the European LCS. Tahm Kench is his most played throughout the regular split, and they won. And I remember talking with it was Low Pally, who was like a challenger level support. He was like, well, it's because he's just better than everyone else. If you go on equal footing and you don't have Sven as your lane mate, you don't get to play Tahm Kench every game and still win lane. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but like we've clearly seen teams be successful by not just saying, oh, you have to win lane, and finding other ways to do it. And I don't know which one is necessarily true. I don't play at that level exactly.
So yeah, I was also talking to a lot of the NA LCS supports about this, because this was such an exciting thing for us and so many of the casters, and we kept saying, "Oh, I love it! Playmaking sports all over the place now." And there definitely is that value there, especially since that's just more fun to watch, right? As
of course,
yeah.
Karma's pretty
you like seeing exactly plays being made, but there were 2 parts to the shielding supports that made them so dominant, and how the entire world for a long time was on this Lulu and Karma train. And not only is it super strong laning phase, but also the security of the game plan for later in the game, where you're protecting this AD carry and the shield values later with the shield stacking items. So if one of the 2 aspects of these supports gets attacked and then maybe nerfed with the Doran Shield, they could do something about the other aspect to still bring them back. And a lot of the North American LCS supports seem to still think that it's a style choice for which type of comp you're running. I still think obviously these supports are very valuable. We've seen
Yeah.
the pick rates for the
course.
shielding ones still be
My
super high.
my big thing also with like, Karma and Lulu and stuff like this is that the baseline is so high. It's like, you don't have to do this crazy like flash RW,
Mhm.
perfectly nail their 2 carries together, and then you win the game. You just stand in the back and you press R and then you press E and you shield your whole team and you have a lot of value, right? Whereas Rakan goes in for the flash W or whatever and you miss, you are pretty worthless now in that
Playing
fight.
some
So
Lucio, baby.
yeah, so I mean, it's like it's essentially what it is, right? It's one of those things where it's like your baseline on the shielding sports is always going to be so high that it's just a safer, it's a more consistent pick. Like you have to have a lot of confidence to be able to make those playmaking, and that's what I think the trade-off should be. It should be like more powerful if you can pull it off, but if you can't, it should be worth less, right? And getting that balance right is when you'll find like an even distribution of the picks. So I hope we can get to that.
Yeah, this is an interesting conversation actually, because now I started thinking about ways to try and make shielding supports more skill oriented and more interesting. I mean, that would be going off down to like a design tangent, but
To me, I actually have a thought on that.
Okay.
And it's not. People are talking about nerfing shields. I actually think you make the shields shorter but
Yeah.
higher impact,
Yeah.
right? So like, if you want to talk about like high skill or whatever, if the Jace is shock blasting and I have to like instantly press my shield and it's like this short little window and I absorb it, that's sick, right?
Right.
Like if with shields like Janna, for example, when you're at
5
45%
seconds long.
CDR on Janna, your shield lasts as long as the cooldown. So you just press it on cooldown. It's the same thing with Karma and stuff. There's no thought to it.
It's 4 seconds on for Karma. It's an 8-second cooldown.
that would pair pretty well with what I was thinking, because I immediately thought back to Abe MIA, who used to be pro support for Complexity. And he was always talking about how he would get these bindings for quickly selecting his AD carry or his different carries on his team, so he could shield super quickly. And I always thought, oh my god, that's so cool, because nobody ever thinks about key bindings in League of Legends for supports. But when I play WoW or when I play MMOs and stuff, I actually like playing healers. And key bindings are a massive part of why I actually like them. Checking, making sure you have shields or dots or whatever, or I mean hots on whatever guy you have. So if we made them shorter or higher impact, then it might increase the value of people actually having key bindings, like Abe was talking about. And maybe if we made key
Higher
bindings
skill cap
or combos like that more,
and they've done it some, right? Like Locket's a decaying shield right now. Like 8 patches ago, whatever, they like bumped it by 1.5x, let it decay over 3 seconds. Like the Steric shield is that kind of as well, where you've got to use it or lose it pretty quickly.
Skill shot shields.
Go. So I definitely hate that, the idea that your teammates can juke a benefit. I know you're kind of joking, but like legitimately, I think skill shot shields and skill shot heals, like I guess Lux aside, even that's kind of wonky, is like, I don't think it's good, because your teammate dodging your saving blow is pretty crap. But like, hey, redemption makes you plan 3 seconds in the future, right? And that can whiff completely, and contrary to some opinion, it doesn't steal Baron, doesn't hit monsters, right? But yeah, I agree. Shields being 4 seconds or less, or them decaying or whatever. And to your hotkey point, actually, I do the same thing. I have a manual cast hotkey for every ability as well, and 1, 2, 3, 4 are my 4 teammates. I rebind my end to something else that I can. I always know if I'm support, 4 is Ashe, and if I hit Shift E4, I will always be Karma shielding Ashe, and I can't screw it up. It's impossible. Unless I'm out of range, and I think that's actually useful for support players.
Yeah, it's definitely really cool. But anyway, why don't we talk a little bit about top lane? Because top lane did not only have some new carry top laners and stuff. We've seen Lucian top, and we've seen some things like this, and that seems to be getting more popular. But also the Rift Herald, right? And like the value of perhaps playing a carry top laner around the Rift Herald, or just like focusing more on the top side of the map.
And I like the Rift Herald for balancing the objectives of the map. I don't think it's super game changing or anything. I do like it when teams can use it better than other teams, and you can get a kill first, and then we get 2 turrets out of it, or pop it on the other side of the map, and try and make the other team have to decide between dealing with a split push Herald or dealing with the rest of the team going somewhere else. But I know we've been talking about this so much, Rift Herald and people using Rift Herald well. What are your guys' thoughts on it?
I honestly think it's in a pretty good place. I know I felt like people were super overreacting to how powerful it is. Like people were like, it just one-shots your turret, you can't do anything. It's like, well, if you're there, you can kind of just kill the thing when it gets summoned.
Or even if you do a bunch of damage to it, then its charge won't
Yeah,
hurt as much.
exactly.
Right,
So,
yeah.
so to me, it's like it's in a pretty good place where it feels like if you use it poorly, it gets nothing. If you use it pretty well, you'll probably get one turret, which is about what you should get.
Yeah.
And if you
Well,
kill them off or they're way out of position, then you will maybe
Get
get
two or-
more.
I feel
maybe
like
even 3.
unless you spaz it out right when you get it, like I did a couple times or one time, you're at least gonna get a large chunk of damage on a turret.
You
I don't
should
think
always get a large.
Yeah,
chunk of
I don't think you ever get nothing out
No.
of it.
Unless you
But
really
I
screw
think, I
up,
think
as
that
you
you
said,
don't
yeah.
always guaranteed get the full turret. That's
Yeah.
more my point. Is
Mhm.
it's like the lowest value should be like the only time you get no turret is sometimes people do try to pull off. I've seen in solo queue a number of times where they try to like drop it bot and then siege top and
Mhm.
like I'm playing top or whatever and I have TP. I just walk down and kill it before it even gets in range of my turret and then I TP and defend the other turret too.
So
and
they
things
got
like that.
your teleport
They got my
cooldown.
teleport,
Ha,
right?
dum dum.
Yeah, there you go. But like, I think like in general, the expected value of a well-used one is one turret, and that's about where it should be because it's like you can solo it, but it's not like ridiculously easy to solo. And if you do it, it takes quite a while and stuff, so you can get punished. Like I just actually really like it, and I think that like I'm surprised by how good of a place I feel like it's in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
me too.
really impressed.
I thought they did really well with it. I actually that was my main point is I thought people were overreacting both ways at
Yeah.
first because at first when it came out they're like, oh my god, giant purple monster, this is sick.
can do everything.
You can take all the turrets and he dances if you're at the Nexus.
Which I've never seen. Still, by
amazing.
the way.
I have.
Oh, I have as well. I've had it in my game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to win so early, then, don't you? I mean,
I mean, you grab it by 20 minutes,
So-
and then you have to win by 24. Right?
Yeah, so if
Which
you
is
grab
early,
it, if you
obviously.
grab it at like 19 and a half minutes, this was basically the latest because
so
he
you're like
despawns at like
slamming this
1945.
game when
Yeah.
when you're Rift.
Well,
Like you're scrimming against Delta Fox, right? And you just
Or
blast them.
I had a game last night where we were crushing them and they gave up and they were basically
open
it
mid.
was NA open mid though, so there's a couple.
Yeah, so
Okay?
a few people kept farming.
But I had the Rift Tail at like 11 minutes and we won the game at 13 minutes. And he was
Oh, okay.
dancing.
Nice.
There you go.
Good stuff.
Honestly, though, your first point about the top lane that you're talking about, the carries is kind of interesting because Kennen is a really big one, right?
Mhm.
Kennen,
Number one
super
everywhere.
highly prioritized. Korea pulls it off all the time. They've got Marin up there, or whatever, split pushing. Now he's playing AP sometimes, which is kind of weird, but
I like it.
yeah, I kind of
You like it, but
I
it's-
think,
I don't
I
think
think
it's
I think
good.
it's playable,
I
right?
think it's fun. I
Yeah.
don't think it's good.
It's
So I think it's playable because so I love champions like Kennen, even like Ezreal in a certain case, especially when Trading Force used to give crit, where you take stock of the game partway through and you say, what do we need more?
Oh wait, are
Like,
you talking about the AP version now that
The chance
you
you
even brought
can.
out? Okay,
Like the chance that you can, right? Where
Yeah.
it's like, my Ezreal example from way back when is like, well, I can go Infinity Edge third and screw all this poke stuff. I just need team fight damage, or I can go tank bust. And like there were cases where you could do it as the right build. But with Kennen, I think it's like, oh, you know what? Actually, yeah, I drafted this early, but their entire team is 5 squishies, like including a Fiora top or whatever. Like I'm not going to win split pushing against a Fiora, not that easily. Eventually, it's going to get really hard for me once you get some defensive stats. So I'm gonna go one shot the Ashe Rakan bot lane. And with their Ari mid or whatever, like all they're gonna die in Slice and Maelstrom. Let's go. I think I love that you can do that.
So I buy that maybe in the drafting, but to your early point, like, oh, like you get midway through the game, you're just like, I'm gonna go AP now with my fervor of battle and like full attack speed page. Well, okay, go for that. You're worthless. Like, so I think it's like it has to be premeditated. Like you have to you can pivot in draft, like when you're still in the draft phase, you're like, oh, they're all squishing me, I can do this. But I still feel like with Ken in particular, like, I mean, this is kind of getting off topic, but like, I just don't think AP is like super strong because the damage is so delayed now on the ult that like you often can react to it.
That's fair.
And like there's a lot of supports I think that answer pretty well, especially shielding sports like Karma and stuff is like hilariously good.
Janna has always been the answer
Yeah.
for me versus AP Kennen, just popping
Yeah,
right back
it's really good.
out.
But
Or
no one plays
Alistar
Janna,
even,
right?
and things like that.
And
but
like
yeah.
if you see them pick Kennen top, like are you really gonna pick Janna and be like, well, I have that
No.
team fight reset for the
Yeah.
split pusher.
No, yeah, exactly.
Right? So it's like-
That's the whole point why I like the dynamic aspect,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
And I think it is a really valuable strategy to be able to make that choice in Champ Select. Before, so you don't head in with your attack speed.
It's very
attack speed.
It's very
Yeah,
similar
I feel
to
you.
flex picks in general, right? Like something you can move top, you can move mid, you can move AD, whatever. And I think always having that flexibility is good. But I mean, in general, like the problem top laner for me right now, like at least I just feel like Fiora is like so obnoxious to play against. Like not even so much like just LCS. Like it is very strong in LCS as a
Super
counter
good in
pick,
solo queue too.
but it's just like it's incredible in solo queue. And when you look at the champions that people play in top lane across solo queue, if you look at any pro top laner, it's essentially going to be Jace, Fiora, Kennen, and like that's like those three are just like so good in lane and stuff. And it's kind of this weird dichotomy where it's like you have a champion that you're like, oh, okay, he's gonna like to your point, you're saying, Fiora's going to outscale you and stuff. But then you also have Fiora where she just wins early against all kinds of matchups and stuff. So it's like that's kind of problematic. And it's just, and for Kennen and Jace, it's just having ranged advantage in top lane is like you always have to push and then you harass them off every ranged minion.
Plus, for Kennen and Jace, it's like they can smash lane and they can have this big kind of snowbally early and mid game, then they fall off a bit. And Fiora is the opposite, where she's just like skyrockets.
Tower dives you at 5 items.
Yeah, exactly.
She gets under inhibited.
She gets three vital procs on you. Yeah. You not only are dead, but your turret is dead, your inhibitor is dead, your teammate is also dead, who's coming over to help.
Because he AoE'd you with the Hydra, and that one.
She didn't even have to use her ultimate on you. Anyway, I think the Fiora one to me is the one that seems more out of line, and is, like the scaling is pretty insane there. What I kind of wanted to bring up though was how people were really criticizing the Kennen pick in North American LCS and being like, I've never seen Kennen, be successful at all. And it was this topic I wanted to bring up of utilizing carry top laners correctly. Because yes, we're seeing the meta change back and we're seeing them, gain popularity, but people are not, split pushing correctly. People are not, or like staying in lightning rush for like the full duration of it, not
disables your auto
coming out to auto attack anymore and stuff like this. And that's what to me makes the pick look bad sometimes. And I've seen a lot of community, hate for the pick specifically, and then they're like, "Hey, you can't pull it off at all." Like,
yeah, I mean that's another thing though. Like when you look at like NA in particular, like NA Jace, right? Like the top lane thing, like. We were like abysmal at playing top lane Jace as far as like even within NA LCS, at MSI, at Worlds, whenever North America picked top lane Jace, pretty much lost. And I think it's not even just on the top laner, because having played I've been playing a lot of top lane now, and while I'm not a pro player,
let me just insert one thing, be clear here, not just NA, but it was also a lot of Kennens we saw in Europe that were not reckless. Were able to correctly split push with 80 Kennen.
Totally.
As well.
But just the big thing for me is not it's not just about the top laner, and I feel like so much of the time the top laner, they're just like, oh, this top laner sucks, he doesn't know how to split push. Your team has to play very differently around you, right? If I'm playing a top lane and I'm playing something where it just sits back and I just farm, I'm playing Nautilus or whatever, or like Galio top or something, you don't necessarily need as much help from your jungler. Whereas if I'm playing Kennen or Jace, my job is to push them in, to harass them undershirt. That is how you win lane. You don't win lane by Kennen by just pushing out the wave and then just standing back and waiting.
Okay,
right?
I have TP priority, guys.
Exactly.
That's not what it does.
You have to bully lane, and that means you have to play aggressive, which means that you are very vulnerable to getting ganked,
you need
to getting punished. You need your jungler to be warding for you. You need your jungler to be in position for counter ganks, for dives, for 2v2s, and it changes the way that the whole team has to play, because that means that then bot lane now doesn't have that jungle help, or mid lane doesn't have that jungle help, and I think that's really where a lot of the teams are failing, is the whole shift in priority for your team. You do not get as much help bot lane if the top lane needs a jungler.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's still a team game, even if you are by yourself split pushing and you have your own mission. Exactly. I mean,
all 5 players.
This is both parts. Azael's the top laner, Freak is the rest of the team.
I'm in the bot lane. You're the jungler here, right? And all 5 players have to play differently.
You can play Ezreal and sit under your turret, because I'm
okay with that, right? Like it's like we need to play your wave clearance, whatever. Maybe Ziggs comes back a little bit more because you need to survive against that. And you're right, the worth to be there. And the Kennen has to actually knock a turret down at some point. It's like you're actually the way we win the game. Like you need to be the prod that goes in and actually makes the game progress. And a lot of top players aren't used to that anymore.
All right, so let's move on to our new section, Overreaction of the Week.
Ooh.
This is going to be really good because it was just week 1. So overreactions are going to be aplenty, right?
Yeah.
Because we have small sample size.
All right.
But boom, CLG and Immortals are at the top of the league right now. Number 1, number 2, best trade ever. Godlike.
Yeah.
I mean, there's actually been a lot of overreactions, I feel like, this week. I feel like I've seen all kinds of C9 doomsday, oh god, we suck, we're not gonna make playoffs. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I've seen the Echo Fox stuff, 040 Echo Fox, everything's fixed, they're godlike.
Hold on, myth bust each one as you go along first.
All right, so C9 the sky is not falling. So these are my 2 that I think are tied. I think C9 is still a very good team. I think I would be shocked if C9 is not at least top 3 by the end of the split. They're very good, and I think that people are just way too much reading this first week. And then for the Echo Fox point, you have to look at strength of schedule. Maybe they are a better team. Froggen had a great week. Acadian looked like he was doing better. But you saw a lot of the same problems as far as, to me, like their biggest problem, I think Keith actually did pretty well. I think it can be solid, but it's their late game stuff. Like their late game looks so bad sometimes. Like when they got insanely ahead of TL, they were like 10K up very early. They then took like 25 more minutes to close this game, where TL,
Right.
it felt like had just rolled over and died. And if you're struggling that much to close out a game against a lower tier team, you are probably not going to be able to get away with that kind of play against a high tier team. So to me, like those two on opposite ends of the spectrum, like, well, guess what? Echo Fox is not the best team, and C9 is not the worst team, right? Like these are going to change, and I think that you give it a couple weeks time, and it's going to go back to normalcy.
Yeah, to me, like the overreaction is benching Golden Glue. Like it's overreaction
that's a good
of the team itself. It's like they lost to CLG,
Mhm.
who's a 2-0 team, a deserved 2-0 team. Like they were power ranked to be a top 3 team in NA LCS.
Has the management come out and like given any explanation yet? Because I know they.
I just see Reddit like pasting Steve's old post about like, you gave us hell,
yeah,
we deserve it, but don't worry. I'm pulling a Reg. I'm stepping in. Like we've got Kane.
Yeah.
It's the really big deal here, and it's like, I'm gonna just parrot what Dash said, which is like, you don't give them one match against a top 3 team in the league when your aspirations are like maybe 7th.
He actually did okay. Like he, like
He was
as far
reasonable.
as like I don't know. I'm
He
not
made
gonna
some
talk
mistakes, but like,
he
oh
definitely
well.
made mistakes, but like he actually farmed lane fine. He was like okay. Like I think he did better than Slushie.
Yeah.
The question is, what if it's actually him? Because the story I want to tell on Golden Glue is like, I know he can be very good, but he doesn't perform on stage. And if he came in as like, I just feel like my stage self, like I feel like I'm still choking, like bench me coach instead of put me in coach.
Yeah.
Like there's a possibility that's what happened there, and I don't know because again, no one's saying anything, and very often like management will protect players, right? And if Golden doesn't feel like it, like if I'm Steve, I don't throw him under the bus. I just quietly hope it goes away or something, and like ask him if he wants to play again next week.
That's fair.
The only thing I saw any of them tweet out was Golden Glue tweeted a 1-word tweet, which was tragic after the loss was Slushie for the team. So now we can put on our hats and read into this. Is he being sarcastic? Is he happy that they lost? So yeah, exactly. You're trying to figure out like, until we hear an explanation or whatever from management, I'll give them a little bit of room. It is incredibly easy to make fun though, because as you said, the post going into
We got
this
faith
split
in our boy Golden Glue.
compared
We're
to
going the distance, one
the
game drought.
actions,
Yeah, I know,
that
I know.
right there, you're just like, what in the exactly?
All right, so what's your overreaction of the week?
My overreaction was the one I talked about, where CLG, Blue, and Teal are best teams in the world. This godlike trade has transformed both teams into
Smithy literally better than Peanut.
Yeah.
Honestly, the biggest thing to me, which I think is true, is that the improvements, which I totally thought that like, you're talking about nobody ever wins a trade. I think someone is always trading up, right? I think that Smithy improved to make it so that it was a win-win trade. I don't think
That's fair.
if you're considering last year, it was a
Automatically made the team
win-win
better.
trade. If I look at just that, but I think Smithy's improvement has been insane, actually. And the effect that he did have on the team, whether it's coincidence or not, or it's just like, oh, we have a different dude around now, or
It can be environment, right? Like
exactly. It could be anything, but like the team looks so much better. They're incredibly decisive and constant plays coming out from them. That's something that I definitely want to see, proactivity from NA teams, because a lot of them, especially once at the bottoms, just kind of get, oh no, we're losing. Oh, try and wait.
What's interesting, because I was watching Bjergsen's stream a couple days ago, and he was talking about how from the outside, you cannot properly judge how good a player is. You can judge how well their avatar plays and how well the champion moves around the map and what it does there, but like you cannot properly judge an actual player and how good they are. And he's like, look, I know who talks on CLG, who makes the calls there. Like I know TSM, I know Cloud9. He's like, I know some of the other teams, so I know how good players actually are outside of public perception. And if like Smithy's talents are wasted on a team with Darshan and Alphamu, but they come to good use, like Smithy is still that same player of like, I'm, for NA jungle standards, I'm a 7 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10 or whatever. And as a teammate, I'm a 10 out of 10, but you don't notice it when I'm on CLG because they've already got 2 10 out of 10s. Like, well, now he's this 17 out of 20 player when he was just, a 7 out of 10 or whatever when he's on CLG. And that's a big difference. And if that logic follows, like, he was always his player, but his talents were wasted.
Yeah. I thought another good example of that was Huni has done a whole bunch of interviews, and he was talking about how, oh yeah, Faker, he's not that great, whatever. I saw him in solo queue. I was like, okay, he's good, but why does everyone say he's the best? And now Huni on Faker's team is just like, all right, he's actually insane. This guy is a goddamn genius. He knows everything all the time, and it's just crazy. So I thought that was a really cool example, because it's kind of everybody knows that Faker is the best and Faker's godlike, but then when you have a teammate say stuff like that, It's a whole nother level.
And I think that like everyone can relate to this somewhat, even just from like playing solo queue. Like you have those players that are just like like especially like as a jungler, right? Those players are begging you to camp for their lane the whole time and stuff. You put all your help into them, and then they don't do anything, right? And then you have that other guy who's getting camped the whole game, and maybe he's like down, he's not doing that well, but he's still like able to contribute. He's still able to offer something, and it's harder I think to see from the outside. Like it's very easy to focus on like, oh, this guy had 3 deaths or whatever, or oh, this guy had the most kills. Like that's the best and that's the worst, but you don't always see like all the resources and all the effort that is put into certain players.
Yeah.
So it's harder to tell who is succeeding without the help of the team sometimes. Like it's not just about, ganking for them, but about like the way that they move around the map and who gets more sideways and all these things that aren't always easily noticeable as a viewer. But
yeah, absolutely.
I think that's it for the overreaction of the week. You want to get us with those Twitter questions?
All right, let's take a look here. What do we have? Oh, we didn't have too many this last week because none of us like tweeted out and asked for them, but we need to renew the call, I guess. Please tweet us more questions at the dive, hashtag the dive lol.
And just tag us, and then we'll check out your questions.
Yeah, and you can even tag Freak now if you want, but...
although I'll be kicked off again if that won't matter. I won't read your tweets. I will. I just won't do anything about them.
Number 1 that we have here from Grant Postma. I'll go with that as far as my pronunciation. So he says, picking from only North American commentators / analysts, who would be your dream team and what would your record be in the NA LCS? So this is to me, the question is dream team of a 5-man squad for playing League of Legends.
Yeah.
In the North American LCS. I think that first of all, even if we got a dream team of any casters in the entire world,
we're not winning a game.
0-36.
Exactly.
It's not even close.
You think the meme streamer dreamer team or whatever,
they're at least in Challenger half
in that script, we would get our asses beat by them.
The Rift Herald is going to be dancing his ass off every game at 12 minutes against us. Like that Nexus is done. So we didn't forfeit.
We played at MSI a couple years ago where it's like, all right, we're gonna go up against them. Hey, at least I killed Febiven twice. I had something going for me.
Also, we came in with a good plan. Like I was talking, like we had a whole 5 minutes plan. I was like, all right, Cloud Templar, I'm gonna start on his red. I'm gonna come up at 2 minutes and 20 seconds.
I'm gonna gank for you
and gank your lane in top lane. He's like, all right, cool. I think he picked Kale or something.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah. All right, I'm gonna get Q for the slow, and I'm gonna get E for the auto attack. I'm just gonna be level 2 because you're coming so early. And I was like, yes. I'm red buff, Jin Zhao. This is so free. He dies at 2 minutes on the first wave. I was like, oh, God. And then you get up there. You've been in this position as a jungler. You're pinging like on the way. He's dead. You get there. Your hands are empty, and you're just like, well, what do I do now? I've already shown myself in the.
My bottom jungle's already gone.
They know that my red buff is their red buff. Like it was just like, oh my God. So that's my excuse for that game.
So who's
as far as the 5 though, but anyway, top lane, Kobe's in the mid lane.
I'll answer the easy part first, which is what would our record be? That would be 0 and
0 wins and however many games we play.
Yeah,
that's how many.
Maybe we go to the promotion tournament and we lose that 10th LCS spot. We welcome Gold Coin United.
All right, now let's actually craft a team to try and answer. What would be our best shot at lasting 220 minutes so we can surrender on our own terms?
Well, the nice thing is we have 5 diamond players now.
There's also early surrender, so we only have last 15 minutes.
Yeah, 15.
I give us a chance to get there.
All right, I'm in there.
We hired Flowers. We have 5 diamond players now. Like, so what it comes down to, like, we would have had to field dash, and that would have been horrible.
Almost everybody is a jungler, though. So to make it easier, let's open it up to Europe as well.
We already have 5 because so us 3 and Jat and Zyrene are both diamond. That's already 5,
and then Flowers is also
Flowers as well. So we have 6.
Are you diamond now, Azrael?
Yeah.
But also Zale's like a top lane main.
Just check it.
Here's the thing.
He hasn't played much ranked, so I'm just
I was also
busting
D2
him.
last season.
Yes,
there you go.
We're up there. Yeah. You're right. I forgot. Like, for somehow I lost count. But like, I know like Jat's got like his wrist injury kind of. So like, he's not playing that much. Like, and if Ivern gets banned, he's gone. And same thing. If Flowers has a Skarner ban, he's like platinum at that point. So
all right, I'm taking jungle because I'm the highest rated.
So Flowers is out of there.
Who's next?
Flowers got bot.
I mean, Flowers or Jat has to fill in mid.
Flowers could play top lane Wukong.
Yeah, I'm a smash.
And you can,
top.
you can move.
Zale's the best top laner on the.
You can flex though, right?
I'm Phil.
Yeah.
All right.
You're Phil.
I'm definitely playing bot lane.
You're definitely AD carry because we don't have any other AD carry.
Okay, so AD carry jungle. Where's Jat?
Jat,
I mean, Jat's a Victor mid and you're a Syndra mid.
He tends to like to play. So I guess we could swap me and Jat.
Just based on champ select.
If they ban,
then?
Is Ivern up? All right, Jat can play jungle. You can take over mid lane.
I think it depends more on mid lane champion pool.
I would rather
each
put
only
you
have
top
like
and
one
put
champ.
Zyrene or Flowers in support.
All right, there we go.
There you go.
All right, so it doesn't even matter.
All right, move on. Next question.
And the other one's the sub. We're last place.
Easy.
What's the last question?
Next question is from Tim, our stats man, the Orca's Elixir. Tim says, how much parity do you think? Oh, this is actually a last week question.
Yeah.
We had to go back and get one from last week because we didn't get it this week. Big tears. Anyways, he said, how much do you think the parity in the North American LCS will have this split compared to how close things were in spring, which was incredibly close? So he did ask this question before week one, which was probably better timing.
I think it's still super relevant because like we still have 8 weeks to play, right? Like we don't really know where the teams are going to fully end up.
But we have some good information to work off now, which is a bunch of parity already opening up in the early week because COG and Immortals moving up the chain for sure. I think COG and Immortals already trajectory to finish better than they did last split. So to me, already I would answer that there would be
who's your,
at least as much.
Who's your like top 6 then, right? Like if we look at, so third place was P1, fourth place was FlyQuest. Are they still in that group?
I think FlyQuest and P1 both dropped down pretty heavily.
Even though P1 made no changes, really. Like, I mean, like, well,
for preseason, I keep them top 4, but based on their first week, I would have to drop them now a little bit. And FlyQuest, like, I would have thought FlyQuest goes up. Maybe they're still not as good as Phoenix 1, but like, they'd be about the same. I mean, CLG I'd put as third place, so I just kind of moved them up the standings, and then I mean, I guess that's almost the same.
Where
top
do you 6. Place Immortals? I feel like that's
so
the
right now I put Immortals as a top 4. Right, like the fact that you straight up beat TSM means okay, I'm gonna pay attention to you. You're legitimately a good team right now. And it's like my initial top 3 is TSM, C9, CLG, and now it's like, I mean, CLG's above C9. Immortals maybe is up there as well, and now Cloud9's 4th, and it's TSM.
These
Immortals,
are
CLG,
heavily recency biased ones,
right?
So we're gonna try and project all the way to the end.
Sure. So yeah, so top 4 in no particular order is like TSM, Immortals, CLG, and then Cloud9. And I think it's probably still Phoenix 1, FlyQuest, but then at that point, Dignitas is really close. Like maybe Team Dignitas is above FlyQuest. Phoenix 1, if they keep sucking. Like,
what about Echo Fox, right? Like
I don't believe in Echo Fox.
No?
I actually think they're still outside of playoffs. I think Envy made upgrades, and we'll see if like Niski plays. Niski, I forget how to pronounce his name. Like the European import might come in for week 2. But with Purion, obviously they look better. So like, you know, you've like for that 5-6, like you've got P1, FlyQuest, Team Dignitas, Envy, like maybe Echo Fox as well. Like all those are fighting for those like last 2 spots kind of, but my top 4 I feel like is pretty secure.
So the question is then, so compared to like last split, right? So we're saying which has more parity. So last split, I would argue TSM C9 was S tier. Like that was a clear tier. Then I think P1 was clearly better than the others. They always seem to be the teams below them. Then there was like, you know, the like 4, 5, 6 that was in, and that was pretty close. But there was like clear tiers. So do you think there's more teams that can compete with like the TSM C9? Is there actually more parity? Or is it going to just end up being TSM and C9 are clearly the best 2 at the end of the
So you're saying there are clear tiers. That was clear towards the
end.
The end third,
So that's what I'm looking towards, right? Like, what is your prediction? By the end of the split, are there more teams that actually have a realistic chance of winning, like of competing at the top, or is it just the 2 teams again? Is it TSM and C9 at the end or no?
Yeah, and I think that there are, because I think that the improvements that we're seeing already in COG and Immortals are real improvements that will carry over. And I haven't seen the same, you know, leaps and bounds from the top teams to keep that gap the same, right? Cloud9 and TSM have not jumped up as much as COG and Immortals have jumped up. So to me, that right there, I think that that's your parity.
Yeah, the only metric by which I'd say the parity has gotten farther apart, if you say number 1 versus number 10, where I think it's more depressing than last year. Where like Envy was a non-depressing 10th place team, but Liquid looks like a depressing 10th place team this split. So like if you're going, you know, TSM or Immortals or CLG or whatever versus like 1v10, that's farther this split. But otherwise, I agree. Like legitimately, I think like 9 of these teams feel good to make playoffs, and only 6 can.
And that's exciting. So, but I think that's gonna do it for this episode of Dive. My laptop is dead, so I'm going random with the outro here. But you guys can check it out. We'll obviously be out on YouTube, but we're on SoundCloud, we're on Stitcher, we're on all kinds of iTunes, we're on a bunch of different stuff. But make sure to tweet us your questions. Hashtag the Dive Wall. You can tweet to Riot Kobe, Riot Azale, Riot Jat. Tag us in there. Use the hashtag so we have better questions for next week. And that's about it for me.
Yeah, if you like Freak better than Jat, then tweet at them. And
let me know.
Have them fight it.
Yeah, people love that. Especially tweet to Jat to let him know that you thought he did worse.
Hashtag Freak win.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll set up a cage match.
Beautiful. Great.
For the next one.
He's got bad wrists. I'll win.
All right. Thank you guys. Goodbye.